What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Almost Functional 40K. Here today to talk about um, how my list has evolved over the last 3 weekends of going to RTTs. Um, so we'll go ahead and start with the first list. This was a list I came up with kind of last minute. I had been running a bunch of champions of Russ, and last minute I decided to pivot into a Stormlance list, which you only got one test game in with, which I'm not always a big fan of taking something with limited testing, but that is what I end up doing. So I had Herald, had a battle leader, or two battle leaders, and a Wolf Lord. So I was running two 6-man Thunderwolf squads. Had a squad of Assault Intercessors, two squads of jump JPIs, squad of Plasma Inceptors, squad of Infiltrators, three Redemptor Dreadnoughts, one with Onslaught, two with Plasma, Scout Squad, and then the two Wolf Squads. The thought on this was the Wolves are hard to kill, the Dreads are decently hard to kill, but the Dreads really get no benefits in this detachment. This list really didn't end up performing that well. So there's not a lot to get in here. The Dreads, I believe, are just a little overpointed for what they do, especially in a detachment that doesn't give them anything extra. Scouts I still love. Thunderwolves are Thunderwolves. The Scepters are okay. JPIs are okay. But so not a lot to really get into on this list because it was just I jumped out of what I had been testing to try something that just popped into my head and I thought might be cool, and it didn't really pan out. So the next lists are going back to what I had been working on, and so there's like more of a progression in those. But between the Thunderwolves and Redemptors, there's just too many points in too few units, is what I believe was the main problem with this list. Then the next weekend, this was a little more back to the Champions of Rust list I have been running. Still Herald. This time I ran a Phobos Lieutenant with a squad of Reavers, which I absolutely loved. This is we talked about this in the Wolf Council video last night, but really, really good unit. Makes it a lot easier to turn on Saga Majesty early. This is something I'm going to try to fit in most of my lists going forward. Lieutenant with combi weapon, solid unit, same point as Scouts. Another little scoring. His auto reactive move is nice. Not auto, his free reactive move is nice. Yeah, so I'll never have a problem with putting him in a list. Don't always take him, but he's pretty useful when you do. This time, instead of a Wolf Lord, I took Logan on Stormrider. So this was another two Thunderwolf list. I just find his base is too big. He's a little unwieldy to move around, and you already have that problem enough with Wolves that I'm not super in love with Logan on Stormrider. I always find that, but then I always talk myself into coming back to it at some point. I just like the idea of him being able to be in the squad so he can finish off units and get us the CP, but it just never seems to quite work out for me. So if I'm going to take Logan, I prefer on foot because he still gives you the once per game ability, and you can use him for containment actions, stuff like that. So then Ragnar, I always run him with 6 Blade Guard. Yorick with 10 Wolf Guard. The battle leaders to go with Logan and Harold. I put the Black Death on the battle leader. This is the one that's going to be, it was in Harold's squad. That makes, so on the charge, Black Death triggers dev wounds on the dog and from his Thunderhammer. So that's 7 dev wound attacks. That's pretty good. The Impulsor was for Ragnar's squad. The Rhino was for Yorick's squad. I find transports are real useful to keep your squads alive a little longer. And once your squads get to where they want to be, they're really, really good for doing actions, holding objectives, stuff like that, because people really don't waste time trying to kill them a lot once they're empty and other stuff is in their face. The Blade Guarder with Ragnar. I prefer them over JPIs, one, because you have a little more survivability to keep Ragnar alive longer, and the reroll ones to saves or hits means if you go into a unit and you don't have Oath, it can possibly help you with your efficiency there. And then just the reroll ones to save, if you choose that, helps keep you alive longer. The 2 damage is great most of the time. You hit half damage or -1, that really tanks their efficiency. So that's the only problem I have with Blade Guard, is running into those kind of lists. Fenrisian Wolves, just cheap 30 points, little screening unit. I'm not a big fan of them, but there's not much else you can take for 30 points. So we put them in this list. Infiltrators, anyone who watches the channel know I love infiltrators. That 12-inch deny just one protects your backfield, so you don't have to worry about it. And there are a couple secondaries, not enhancement, engage, extend battle lines, and defend stronghold. They can all help you score just by being there. And they also help prevent the enemy, one, from getting to your back objective, but two, makes it harder for people to score. Establish locus on your side, sabotage in your deployment zone, engage on all fronts. It helps bottle out one table quarter, and behind enemy lines, it can make it a lot more difficult. So it helps you with a couple secondaries and really sets down some enemy secondaries. So I really always love taking infiltrators. The Reavers, like I said, with the lieutenants, you can deep strike in, shoot, and move, possibly charge something, turn on Saga Majesty really, really early, and possibly help tank the enemy's primary score on an early turn, which can really swing the game sometimes. Scouts, I always scout mine right in the middle, towards the middle objective if I'm able to, if I get to scout first or infiltrate first, and I just always set them up, because most events I go to are GW train, so that if the opponent gets first turn, their scout move will get them behind that whatever little piece of ruin is right there next to the center objective, and make them unchargeable and unshootable unless you can really, really get around that wall, which most armies can't turn one. And if for some reason I do go first, they're sitting right there in case I draw extend, area denial, secure no man's land, lots of stuff like that, where they can just auto score that and nothing else from the army has to worry about exposing itself. The Thunderwolves are, I mean, we all know what the Thunderwolves do. They rush out, they can hold up a lot of stuff. I do like them in Champions and Roughs because they actually can do a lot of damage. They're super survivable. They just really are what makes a lot of these lists go, because they just put so much pressure on your opponent, and then you can score behind them while they hopefully hold your opponent up. And in Stormlance, that's their main job, is to hold stuff up, because their damage isn't as high. But I find in Champions of Wrath, they actually do the majority of the damage for the army. Then the Wolf Guard running with Yorick. They get +1 to hit if they're led by a character, so they're hitting on 2s. Yorick gives them reroll 1 to hit and wound. And if they're attacking a monster character vehicle unit, full rerolls to hit and wound. So even if they're not fighting a monster character vehicle unit, they're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. So that's basically full rerolls anyway. And then if they are, they also get the reroll of their wounds. So this is a knight unit that slots into a lot of detachments, just because it doesn't require Oath or a lot of strats or anything to buff it, because Ulrich really just turns on everything they need by himself. So this is a unit I really, really like and run in a lot of lists. So this list was all combat, no shooting, which my first round at this event, I lost to Star Shatter Necrons by 1 point. And that is mainly because I forgot to draw secondaries on turn 4, so I got a 0 there. So I probably should have won that. If I'd drawn secondaries, I would have won that game. Starlance is something I've had a lot of trouble with. Not Starlance, Star Shatter. So I was really happy with how the list performed in that game. Then the next game I played into. Why can't I remember? No, the last game I played into. I played into a full combat Fabius Creations of Bio list, which was a real tight game, just combat on combat. So that was the first game where I was like, man, I really wish I just had a little shooting to put the pressure on him so I can make them come to me because I can start killing some of their units, popping some of their transports. Just really helping that game. And then the last game I played into a Kroot list. It was 70 Kroot, 12 Rampagers, some lone spears, I think they're called. But behind it, he had Riptides and Hammerheads, which were really efficient into killing wolves. And I just couldn't kill through the Kroot fast enough to start eliminating some of those targets. So I was like, all right, I need to add some shooting into the list, which is where we went into for the next RTT, which was this last weekend. So this one, I still had Harold. I still, with a 6-man, I still had the Phobos Lieutenant with the Reavers. I actually have a Lieutenant in Reaver armor with a second squad of Reavers because he extends their Neg 1 OC to 6 inches. So this one actually started infiltrated, which was pretty decent. I liked that. Still had Yulrik units, and then I had the battle leader to run with the wolves. So I basically dropped Ragnar with his Blade Guard and the Impulsor, and Logan, the second battle leader in the second Thunderwolf squad. And so what I ended up really picking up for that was, and I only have one pack of JPIs here and no Assault Intercessors. So I picked up 2 Ballistas, 2 Lancers, still the Infiltrators. I actually brought 2 Outrider squads. I had 2 Reavers, still the Scouts, 1 Thunderwolf, and the Wolf Guard. The Outriders, now that they get a +1 strength and damage on the charge, really pair pretty good with Thunderwolves, and I find they actually can hit fairly hard in Champions of Russ. This little 3-man unit can really go clear out other people's screens fairly efficiently in Russ with sustained hits and stuff up, and they're harder for other people's little skirmish units to remove, so they have to send something a little harder out. But yeah, so I went really heavy into the shooting in this list. I was thinking it maybe was a little too far, so playing through, I did end up my last round losing to a Blood Angel list, and thinking, all right, I need to cut down on the shooting a little bit, still keep some, and maybe go a little more combat-y. So I was like, all right, I'm going to drop the 2 Lancers and run 2 Ballistas was my main thought. And then I had the weird idea to run Canis Rex. So here was the list I ended up coming up with, and I did get 1 practice game in with it. So still have Harold, Lieutenant with the Reavers, 2 Battle Leaders, and a Wolf Lord. So I'm back to 2 Wolf Squads, which I like. Still the Infiltrators, still the Scouts. I played against the Stern Guard in the Blood Angel game at the last RTT, and they really, really wrecked me pretty good. He had 1 10-man, but they get a little more buffing from that detachment because he can make them a character unit and give them sustained hits on all their guns. And they really, really can put a lot of mortal wounds into your Oath target. Then I had 60 points at the end, so I just threw an Innovator in as just like an action monkey. Then 2 Impulsors for the Stern Guards, and then Canis Rex. So in this game, I found the Thunderwolves did basically everything. They carried this whole game. So I did win, but pretty handily. But the Canis Rex, his shooting was a little subpar for what I wanted. And then he died to some Tyrannifexes, or a Tyrannifex, a Hive Tyrant, and a Maleceptor. But he did take the Hive Tyrant down to 3 wounds before he went and helped kill a Norn Emissary with his shooting. So he's really just a big distraction piece that took shots away from the Thunderwolves, which ended up being really, really big because they stayed at pretty much full strength till really, really late in the game, which I thought was good. The Stern Guard were underwhelming because in this list, especially with no Logan, I find that you don't want to put the Oath target on something they're shooting. You want it on something you're sending the Thunderwolves into. So without Oath, they really, really don't put out as many devs. So I don't think they're as efficient that way. If you have a list where you're running Logan, you can have 1 turn where they go into the Oath target, and then their efficiency really, really spikes. But I find you're going to want oath on something you're going to charge most of the time with this. That's another reason I like ballistas if you're going to run them, because they can reroll themselves without needing oath. So even though the test game went really well, I was underwhelmed by the stern guard. So I ended up, I'm pretty sure, I'm going to show you how I'm changing this list. Close this. So go back to the list. So what we're going to do in this list, why is it, how do I get to the list? So what I ended up deciding to do is drop the 2 stern guard units and their impulsors, and put back in 2 ballistists, which I really, really like as a support unit because they don't need oath. And I like them a little better than the Lancers because they have more shots, and you can always go frag into some horde type armies. So while each Lancer shot is more potent, you get twice as many shots. And I find when you're going into armies that have good invols on the stuff you're trying to kill, only having 2 shots with the Lancer, because even with the reroll, a lot of times you're only going to get 1 through, and if they hit that invol, nothing happens. So having 4 shots to try to get past the invols, I find, is a little better. And that ended up leaving us with 100 points. I was like, all right, there's not a lot. Great. You can take another infiltrator. You can take a stern guard unit again. I was like, all right, well, let's just drop this ATV, go up to 80 points, or 160 points. So now we can take 2 80-point units, and Marines, especially Wolves, have a lot of options at 80 points. I'm like, all right, so we're going to throw in an Outrider squad because I really like them in Russ. So that leaves us another 80 points. So we could run a second Outrider squad, which was a thought, but what I decided to do was run a second Reaver squad. One, you can start with, it's no character with it, but they can run out, and between them and the Outriders, you have 2 units. You can really threaten the middle objective if people are just sending out little skirmish stuff to kill it off, do some actions for you out there possibly, and just deny them being able to hold it for primary. So this is the next thing I'm going to try. I don't have an event this weekend, but the weekend after I should, and then I'll probably be back in the 3 weekends in a row type thing. Actually, I think I have a GT coming up either in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So that'll be a nice thing. This is what I think I'm going to take to that. I will get some more test games in over the next week or 2 before the events. So there may be some slight changes, and if there are, I'll let you guys know about that. But this is the list I think I'm sticking with for now. So 2 Wolf units, Hailed and a Lord, both with Thunderwolves, battle leaders, full 6-man wolves. No Black Death in this list, which I could play around with, try to find 25 points to put it back on a battle leader here, which could be really, really nice. But we're going to try without it for right now. Infiltrators always, 2 Reavers, 1 Scout, 1 Outrider, double Wolf, 2 Ballistas, and then Canis Rex. We'll see how the Canis Rex goes over some of these test games. He didn't do a lot in the first game, but he did take a lot of attention away from the Wolves, which is very valuable. But for 450 points, I'll see if over my next few test games I feel he is getting his points worth out of the list, because I could always drop him, add a Lancer or 2 or Vindicator, add probably only 1 more shooting unit if I did that, and put some more combat back in. So one of the things I liked about Canis is he's a big, scary target. He has some decent shooting, and he is good in combat with a flat damage 9 on his big attack. So that's why I liked he was a shooting platform and a combat platform, which is another reason I always end up liking Redemptors, is because they're kind of both. I like something that's good at both. But that's where I'm at for now. We also have a bunch of guys. Aiden's going to a GT this weekend. We have 2 other guys from the chat going into a GT. this weekend who should be on the channel next week. So I'll pick some of their brains too, and that could also possibly change some ideas on what I'm running. But that's where we're at for now. So not too much to add on that. But thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff, and we'll catch you next time.